It's the MyMichelleLive podcast.
Looking for the God story and news of the day. MyMichelleLive News and Views. Here's Michelle.
Here's Michelle, and friend. Today we're going to take on a tale of two countries. In the aftermath of the election, if you really knew the parallels between our corner of the world and news coming out of Israel, you might better understand what's really happening today and ride out what might be coming in the future. We are going to take a look at a tale of two cities and a tale of two countries and a tale of our elections with a little view from Jerusalem.
And now, a view from Jerusalem with Rabbi Adlerstein.
Yes, our beloved Rabbi Adlerstein joins us. Rabbi, you made it through the election.
Made it through the election. I think it was a lot of big to-do about nothing. And that's, I think, what we're going to talk about. It was not so easy getting through today. We had woke up this morning. It was already in full swing of the daily schedule. And we had two bus bombings within a half an hour of each other. And the second one was literally 2 minutes from my house.
Oh, my.
And the suspect is being looked for in the neighboring Palestinian village, which is in walking distance.
Please lock your doors and windows. And it's not unlike what's happening here. We've had a nightclub shooting last night, another shooting, a mass shooting in a Walmart. It just seems like the world's falling apart. We can get very tunnel vision and see what's happening in our own backyard. But when we realize that it's not isolated to our backyard, it puts it in perspective, Rabbi.
It sure does. And the people here, because it's a small country and everybody knows someone who knows the victim. In this case, I know two of the victims, including the 1 degree of separation from the 16-year-old boy who was killed today.
Oh, God.
It states, how many people can really wrap their heads around the fact that there have been over 300 violent incidents? That's understating. We're talking about semi-massacres in the United States so far this year. We're not talking about 2 or 3. We sometimes remember some of the main ones. Oh, yeah, there was Tree of Life in Pittsburgh a couple of years ago. I think there were 3 just this week. And people develop this tunnel vision. And you have to. It's a necessary defense mechanism. With the bombings and all that, I still feel safer here in Jerusalem than I do walking the streets of Brooklyn. I think that we can't stamp out the terrorism. There's no way that it can be done, but we have more of a handle on it. We have security apparatus that's willing to do something about it. And we don't move for things like no cash bail and prosecutors who announce that they're not going to prosecute terrorists if they kill less than 3 people, which is the parallels are going on in the United States. So that allows us here to at least pick ourselves up, dust ourselves off, and move on with life.
Additionally, we decriminalize criminal activity that aligns with our political ideology. And that, to me, brings that parallel of our corners of the world along with this problem that we saw within the election. Now, there has been a real striking parallel between what was being heard in the United States about our election and what's being said across the globe there in Israel and your elections, which were November 1st. We heard a lot of, it's the end of, in fact, I don't know if you heard this, but historian Michael Beshkalas was warning on MSNBC that our children will be arrested and conceivably killed if Republicans take Congress. And it's not unlike commentators in your corner of the world, like Thomas Friedman. It's this idea of demonization. And if the other side, it's not about gas prices, the economy, crime, for example. It's about the overturn of democracy. It's about it doesn't matter who's on our side, who's on the ballot. It's the fact that the other side is so demonically evil that you can't possibly vote for them and show your face in a free society.
And we had exactly the same thing going on, and it hasn't let up a bit. And I don't think it will. This was going to be a vote on democracy. And if Bibi was returned to power, especially with a right-wing coalition, it meant that the whole dream of Israel was going down the drain. It was going to mean that the free judiciary was being thrown on the trash heap, and that they were going to turn Israel into Iran. And this is coming from the outgoing prime minister, not just some pundit on MSNBC of Israel, which we have here too. The parallel is just amazing. Another parallel, Michelle, is that you're talking about two societies that are split down the middle.
Oh, indeed.
And an election here, an election there is really not going to cure things. We in Israel wound up a little bit ahead of you in the United States, because while Congress is going to be paralyzed for the next 2 years, with the Senate split actually down the middle, and the House of Representatives like a majority of 1 or 2, which means that every single individual in Congress has incredible power to block legislation, to get more pork barrel stuff through. It's a nightmare here. It took 5 elections. But finally, the 5th time around, there was a decisive vote, it seems, for a right/religious coalition, which a lot of people in the United States would really like to see, by about 9 points. Now, people will challenge me on this, and I'll stand behind it, that if you look at the election results in Israel, they'll say it was just 30,000 votes separated the left from the right. But that's only if you count the Arab vote. And the Arab vote is neither left nor right. The Arab vote is, and certainly they're entitled to it and probably should be voting that way, to further Arab interests. They're interested in improving infrastructure, which they should be in Arab areas, but that's not a left-right issue. When you discount that and you look at the total votes of the center and left in Israel, they lost by 9 points, 9 percentage points. And that's a healthy margin, and gives the incoming administration a chance actually to do something with a mandate from the people.
And in our country, it was nearly completely split down the middle when you are looking at some of the majority of Democrats in the Senate, the majority for Republicans in the House, and even in the gubernatorial races. It was extraordinarily close, nearly completely split down the middle. That just says to me that we are horrifically divided. There's very little middle ground anymore. What is really behind it? Probably the more interesting question. We've, up to this point in our conversation, just axed on about what's known about facts. But what we like to get to on this program is the deeper story. Is God involved at all in the elections? And is there a God story that we can pull out of this?
And you know the answer to that, or you wouldn't be running this fight. There's always a God story. This is a bit more confusing. Hobbes used to talk about man in the state of nature, and the nasty life in the state of nature is nasty, brutal, and short. And we've been pondering those words for a long time. When you get rid of the social graces, what's left? I think we're seeing a lot of what people are when they're not concentrating on. And that in the religious sector, 100%, read my words, including my neck of the ultra-Orthodox world. People get tunnel vision, myopia. They just are seized with this idea that they have the truth to the exclusion of everybody else. The cure to that used to be living in America, living in the West, where there was a trading of ideas, when you talked civilly to your neighbor, when media were actually interested in presenting two sides of an issue. respectfully. But things have hardened so much. We've talked about some of the reasons for that in the past, but that's the God story in my mind. Lots of people wave the banner of God, but if you're truly someone who follows God, then you have to be respectful of people who disagree. That people are not meant to be all the same. If they were, God would have just created us as robots or automatons. But that's not the way he chose. That's not the way he chose to create life. One of the sections of the Bible, of the many sections that don't get enough attention, because people are bored by the detail, is in the book of Numbers, the description of the tribes that were camped around the tabernacle and the exact order in which, when camp broke, they were supposed to march in that great march to Israel. And who needs all that? God spends less time on some really major issues. What's the point of that thing? So I can tell you that in Jewish tradition, certainly one of the takeaways from that is God likes variety. God likes variety. This world is supposed to be a place in which godliness becomes accessible to us by different people serving him in different ways. Now, we should not be respectful of evil, and we should have the courage to call out things that are evil. But not everything that's different from my opinion is evil. It's a different way of living life and even of serving God. And I'm pained by the fact that we seem to have lost that capacity. Some of us as parents do a fairly good job insisting that our children are exposed to other points of view, can watch their parents have a civil conversation with people they disagree with, and learn about a trading of ideas and cross-pollination of ideas between people. But it's not accessible to a lot of people. And I'm not sure that our religious institutions do such a good job of it, except for the ones that actually don't stand for anything. Those are like everybody has a voice and all roads lead to the same place. If all roads lead to the same place, they lead nowhere.
Oh.
The hard part is to be firm and convicted about the truth of your way of serving God, and yet understand that God has room for others.
Powerful in that, realizing that I think diversity is, echoing what you said, part of God's plan. If every issue, every nuance was addressed in the Holy Scriptures, we wouldn't have to think, nor would we really have to rely on God or to seek him out, because it's just right, black and white. We could be little legalistic automatons and just do what it says there. And to a degree, there is a lot of guidance in the Scripture, but there's enough unity that we have to rely on God. We have to seek him out. For example, I can't go to the Holy Scriptures and say, okay, I've got 2 job offers. Which one do I take? Michelle, thou shalt go with... It doesn't say that. There's a reliance that we must have on God. And it starts with a recognition of God, which we have greatly lost. And it leads to another issue. Many of our viewers and listeners know that I have been on vacation. I went to Mexico on a cruise for nearly 2 weeks. It was glorious. But I witnessed 2 things, 2 separate instances that really impacted me, Rabbi. One was at the terminal. A young girl, probably Gen Z age, was yelling at the dock attendant, "What do you mean I have to be back here at 7? You are squashing my vibe. I'm here on vacation. I should be able to come back whenever I want to, and that's just not enough time." And he said, well, that's when the boat leaves. And she was yelling and demeaning and almost getting violent. And I intervened and told her, honey, you don't have to be back here at 7. You can do whatever makes your heart happy. However, if your entitled vibe isn't back here at 7, the boat is going to leave. And she was just looking at, how dare you talk to me that way? That was one instance where I realized that we don't have tolerance. We have taught ourselves that it's all about us because we put ourselves on the throne instead of God. When we put God on the throne, something that you say often when you come on the program is that we are God's image bearers. We're created in the image of God. When we see people like that, we don't yell at attendants like that. We don't say, I have right to have fun on my vacation trumps everybody else's right to get out of port at the right time. And that leads me to the second one. I was on the beach, and a lot of other Americans from the ship were there as well. There were a lot of Mexican nationals selling goods and wares and food. A man was walking by with these big sticks of grilled shrimp. And a woman, he asked people next to me, are you interested? And she said, no, thank you. And then she rolled her eyes as he walked on and said, gosh, all these people want your money. I'm trying to enjoy the same. It's all about me. But then this happened, Rabbi. A homeless woman wearing nothing but a fuzzy blanket. That's all she seemed to have, was all covered up. And she was elderly. And the man walked by her and then stopped. I watched him turn around and he said to her, would you like some shrimp? And she looked down like she had no money. He said, no charge in Spanish. He gave her the shrimp, and her shaking hands were reaching for it. He stayed to say, would you like some seasoning, or would you like some lime? And she's trying to hold her blanket and put seasoning on. So I got up and I helped her. She smiled, and that said it all. And then she walked on, and I asked the man, could I pay for her? And he said, no, I want to be God's blessing to her. It made me realize and remember that we look at people through the eyes of our own selfish glasses instead of realizing they are God's image bearers, created in the image of God, precious beyond worth, beyond human, or rather beyond earthly value. It's something that we've lost, and I think that comes into play in the God story in these.
Indeed. And I'm sure for that reason that in Jewish tradition, so often when Elijah is seen as returning to earth and having conversation with somebody, he's usually depicted as a pauper, low status, who would be spurned by other people, and it's only those who can see through who are really the ones who are entitled to speak to somebody like Elijah the prophet returning. This is big stuff. God has us here in order to recognize his kingdom. It doesn't mean be scared of the big guy upstairs with a big stick. It means recognizing godliness wherever you can see it, and the chief place where you can see it is in human beings, including those that you don't agree with. There was a famous Jewish teacher of the 19th century. His name is Rabbi Yisrael Salanter. He started something mentioned on the year before called the Musar movement. It was a movement to focus on character development and introspection and things like that. He put together 13 rules of ethical growth and development. And the last one, and maybe the most memorable one, was be careful in the honor of every other person, especially those with whom you disagree. That's powerful.
It's very powerful.
But you have to teach people that. That's not what kids do in school. It's not what they get on their handheld devices, which teach them to be the center, literally the center of their own universe. And it's one of the reasons, I'm not sure I'm allowed to say this on the air, why I think it's so important for people of religion, whether they're Jewish, Christian, or Muslim, to get their kids in schools that stress their religious heritage. Without that, they not only are not going to continue, they probably have much less of a chance of being decent human beings.
What we're seeing and what I'm hearing from our conversation today is that as we look at the election, we will be analyzing it for months to come until something else new and shiny comes up that distracts us. But in essence, it is not about who we voted for. While that is important, and I encourage people to vote, that isn't of paramount importance. What really is not who's in the White House, who's in the House of Congress, it's who's sitting on the throne. And when God is sitting on the throne, it puts things in perspective. It helps us to recognize that our votes may be important, but what we're doing in our homes and how we're treating the people around us may actually have a better impact than what took place in the voting booth. Is that kind of radical?
It's as radical as our common Judeo-Christian legacy. It was the first document that put a lid on power, whether it was the power of the king or the power of the priest, where everyone, as the Bible emphasizes, is treated the same. That's not the way civilization has unfolded since then, with various power structures. And the problem, if there is a problem with what you said, is that it's easy for people to nod their head and say, yeah, that's right, God's the king, and then turn around and use that certainty about their connection with God to pummel anybody else with a slightly different view. There's no question that there's good religion and bad religion. America today, the mainstream would have us believe that all religion is bad. But we know that there is bad religion. The Bible says it itself in many places. But we have to stop and note the difference between bad religion and good religion. There's plenty of good religion out there, plenty of it. And we could be using a lot more, which is the point of your show, which is why I'm happy on it.
And this is a lesson that I think is very important today, because as we go to air, we're going to be bringing this home to our own tables. Thanksgiving has become a microcosm of the battleground of politics in the United States. This division, near civil war, really, it almost seems like we're at least at the precipice of at least an intellectual civil war in the United States if we're not fully engaged in it. And how far that goes down the road to an actual civil war may rest on our shoulders. But I think, Rabbi, it may actually start at our tables, our Thanksgiving tables, where family members and friends come together from differing ideologies, sometimes different faiths, often different political points of view, and they come with their own religious jihad, so to speak, of I've got to win the argument, I've got to show you how you're wrong. But maybe we can bring this conversation home with what we really should be bringing to the Thanksgiving table. Your thoughts?
It's sometimes hard to remember what Thanksgiving is about. I know lots of people who think Thanksgiving, that's the day before Black Friday, isn't it? So we're probably thanking God for a season of holiday bargains. And you're not allowed to talk about what the original Thanksgiving was, of people who traveled from Europe looking for freedom and found it here in America, and then took the time to thank God. And I know the picture wasn't perfect, but was shared with their neighbors. That didn't always continue, but that was important. Thanksgiving should first and foremost be a time of giving thanks. God should be front and center in the conversation. For people from my background, with a mother who was a Holocaust survivor, both immigrants, the fact that the United States was a home for those who fled every kind of injustice and found a country not free of anti-Semitism, but certainly full of lots and lots, millions of good people and lots of opportunity. That's something you look around the world today, and so many countries are just breaking down the doors, trying to get in. And we're oblivious to it. We're just thinking, should we close the border? Should we not close the border? Without thinking, what are these blessings that we have? And we don't put into words liberty, freedom, opportunity. The fact that few of us, there are some, too many, but few of us really worry about dying of starvation in the street. That cannot be said of millions of people around the world today. Where people do die of starvation, and where there is no law and order of any kind, and it's just a jungle of the powerful over the people with less. The sheer number of people today who are at risk of being killed on a given day for views. Yeah, I'm still smarting about the State Department's decision to remove Nigeria from the list of problematic countries for religious liberties, where Christians are literally slaughtered every week and doesn't even make news anymore. The fact that we here don't live in Iran, what the people of Iran are going through today, and it's not just a question of women's rights and the freedom not to wear a hijab. You're talking about a country that is in the thrall of a bunch of old religious fanatics. And they have the power, literally, of life and death over people. We're not there yet, America. Wake up. With all your gripes, we have what to be thankful for. It's okay to have complaints and to work, each according to his own heart, on the issues that are important. Let's start with a basis of, wow, what a privilege it is to be a human being, to be created in the image of God, and to be among people who generally appreciate.
The Bible says, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. That reminds me, when iron and iron meet, sparks fly. Oftentimes when we have differences of opinion, sparks fly. If you have been married any time at all, sometimes sparks fly. There's differences of opinion, but it sharpens us. It makes us better. We are not sharp. We become dull and absolutely useless if all we have are a bunch of people surrounding us telling us, yes, what you believe is always right, and what anyone else believes other than you is completely wrong, completely bad, evil, demonic, and the like. Taking everything that we've talked about today and putting it in a nice little capsule. Remember that as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. To be sharp, to be ready for good use, sometimes takes challenges. Receive those challenges and be challenged to love one another, to love your neighbor, and to above all, love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, your mind, everything that you are. Because if you can at least put your effort there, instead of who did someone vote for and how do they think differently, it puts everything else in perspective. And I think that's what encapsulates everything that we've talked about today and the God story that is so vital in our time. Rabbi, I'll give you the final.
There's a great story I like relating. It comes from one of the great teachers of the last generation, of a king who probably was a predecessor to one of our recent presidents and had a bit of an ego problem. But he had vast power, and he decided one day that he wanted a testimonial, the perfect testimonial to his greatness as a king. So he announced the competition, and the people were selected, and they were told, we're giving you 30 days, anything that you want, food, clerical support, whatever. And after 30 days, everybody's going to read their testimonial. The person who comes out on top will be recipient of vast riches, and everybody else will be headed. So the stakes are high, and they all get to work. And the fateful day comes, and they have this big banquet, and the press is there, and everybody else. And first contestant gets up, and he starts reading, and everybody's looking at the king's face. And the king first is indifferent, but then when he hears the praise, he starts getting more and more appreciative and animated, till at the end of 3 minutes, he's standing on his feet and clapping. First contestant finishes, and the second guy now gets up, and he's in a bind. He put together something that was pretty good, but he said the king was so into what the first guy said. Like, how could I better that? So from memory, he starts reciting verbatim everything that the first guy said. That was a long oration, so it took the king a couple of moments before he realized what was going on. Originally, he liked to, hey, this sounds familiar, but it sounds good. Then he realized, wait a second, this guy hasn't said anything new. He's doing the same thing that the first guy did. So they take him out and behead him. So a great Torah teacher of the last generation said, that's life. We're here to praise God. God's not an egomaniac and he's not a narcissist. He doesn't need the praise. He's doing it for us. But what kind of praise is it when we all do it the same way? It's only effective praise when everybody has to process God differently. There are different generations, different environments, different challenges. And we all manage to come out in the same place, proclaiming God's oneness and God's unity and God's kingdom over earth.
And there it is. And there it is. And we can maybe recognize at our Thanksgiving table that each person at each place setting is at a different place in their walk in life and maybe in their walk with God or towards God, and in some cases away. But our job is to be God's love to the world. And maybe in that, we can find hope in the election aftermath, no matter where you are on the planet, on our side of the globe or on the other side of the globe. Rabbi, I just want to say that one of the things that I am thankful for is for you. I've been encouraged by our conversations. I've grown from the times that we get to spend together when you come on the program, and I am very thankful that God placed you in my life. So if I'm going to start my Thanksgiving celebration off right now, a day early, with a little Thanksgiving on your behalf.
Thank you. And reciprocated, Michelle. I love the opportunity to get together and to show people that coming from two very different and sometimes not so different religious traditions, and both of us are confident and fully into our own way of approaching God, nonetheless, to show people out there that there is, in fact, a Judeo-Christian legacy. There are things that God has taught humanity, not just Jews, not just Christians, but humanity, and that we can effectively share them with the world. It's been so exhilarating and something I've shared with my family. So I can't get a turkey here in Jerusalem. I'm hoping that he's going to airlift for me ShopRite potato chips. Potato chips have a flavor, limited flavor called turkey fixings. Potato chips. I'm hoping that a package of them is going to land on my doorstep tomorrow, because that'll be as close as I can get. I'll be thinking of you and your turkey dinner, and thankful nonetheless without the turkey and the cranberry sauce and the pumpkin pie. It's a great world. It's a great life.
Oh, it is.
Thank you so much, Michelle.
And thank you for watching, listening, viewing, and being part of spreading the God story. It's what we need. I'm thankful for you. Thanks again.
More news and views at MyMichelleLive.com.